Aloha. So after we did Hackwich number 2 in class, I saw some things that were happening on the student Xcode projects, and I wanted to point some of those things out before moving forward in this class. So think of this as sort of tips and tricks, and also in this video I'm going to be going over how do you sort of troubleshoot if your simulator isn't running. This is the video to watch to help you with that. So let's go ahead and get started. So this is Hackwich 2. As you can see, I didn't complete all of it. I asked you guys to add 2 buttons and 2 IB actions, and I wanted you to execute some code when the buttons were pressed. So let's go ahead and pick up where we left off. I'm going to go ahead and select the view controller. We're going to open up the assistant editor, and we want to make sure that the view controller.swift file shows up. There also is a view controller.swift file, and in parentheses it'll say interface. That's not the file we want to work with. We want to make sure that it's this file right here, view controller.swift. If you see that this is not the correct file, right? This is the file that's friends with the view controller here. You need to be able to get that file, the correct file, to show up on the right hand side. How do we do that? We go up here to automatic. The first thing you want to try is just right here where it says automatic, and you can select this. This is the correct file. If right here the correct file is not available, we're going to go up one to manual, and we're going to go through Hackwich 2. We're going to go into the project folder, and we're going to select view controller.swift. So that's another way that you can select the correct file to show up in the assistant editor mode. All right. So once we've got the correct file showing up, we're good to go. As you can see, I've created my first IB action. And actually, let's wait a second. I want to make this font smaller. It's a little bit too big for the video mode. So I'm going to stop here for a second and show you guys how to do that. If you want to make your text big or small, we're going to go to Xcode, Preferences, and we're going to go to Fonts and Colors. I'm going to select all the text here, and I'm going to drop it down to about 14. And that adjustment should have been made. Great, that looks much better on the screen. So we created the IB action. Wonderful. The next thing I wanted you guys to do was I wanted you guys to, so we're going to unclick the view controller so that we can get the objects library popping up. I wanted you guys to add another button. So button, not bar button item, just another button. And I'm going to say press me to. So I'm going to retype the text there. I'm going to create another IB action. So remember, guys, that the IB action needs to be created outside of any function or any other IB actions. So as you can see, this is the outside curly bracket. So I can go ahead and create an IB outlet right there. Remember that this is an outlet. This is an action, not an outlet. And I'm going to name it press me to button pressed, right? Because the action is associated with the button being pressed. So we're going to connect. And once again, this is the code block. Remember, guys, that the code block is in the middle of the opening curly bracket and the closing curly bracket. Okay, so I'm going to give myself a little bit more room here, and we're going to print using the print function. Goodbye. Okay, so let's see what happens. One thing I want to point out here before I play or use a simulator or run the simulator, I guess you could say, I want to make sure that you guys are using or building using the iPhone SE as indicated down here. And when we build the simulator and run the simulator, we want to then use the same corresponding iPhone SE. So you can go here and you can click on iPhone SE. And that way, your view controller size, the size of everything in your storyboard, will match the size of the iPhone simulator that you chose. So let's go ahead and build and run. And I want to remind everyone to be really patient with the simulator. There's a lot of powerful things that are happening here in the simulation. And it really helps for us to be patient and allow the simulator to come up and not keep pressing it. All right, guys, so it looks like my simulator is up and running. I want to point out something right here because when I had tried to press the button, I didn't actually see my messages coming through. So I'm going to go here, ahead and collapse that, bring the simulator back into view. Let's bring the simulator back into view. And you see there's this little thing right here, and it says show console. You need to make sure that that's highlighted in blue. So we're going to see the output. And the output, guys, remember, is the print messages, right? So the strings are going to print. We'll bring the simulator forward. And if we press the press me button, then hello world is the output. If we press the press me to button, goodbye is the output. That's exactly what we would expect. Okay, so great. Everything is working the way that we expected. There's some things that I saw in class and I wanted to point them out to you guys today, so that we don't run into that mistake moving forward in the future. Couple things I want to point out is if you look right next to where your IB action has been created, there is a circle here. And if I hover over that circle, I can see which UI control or button is associated with that IB action. So if I hover, that's exactly the button that I would expect. Okay, let's hover over the other one. Awesome. That's exactly, those connections are exactly correct. So what I saw yesterday, and this happens, is if folks were hovering over one of their buttons, it was actually connected. The IB action was actually connected to both buttons. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to get rid of this second IB action. And you can see that the connection has disappeared. And I'm going to connect this IB action here. So we've got, that's fine, right? So those are both connected now. And what that means is that when the user presses any of these two buttons, what's going to execute is hello world. Okay? And oftentimes when we develop, usually each button executes a different lines of code. So in this case, we may have made a mistake and attached the IB action to both of these buttons. So we want to correct this, right? How do we correct this? So what we want to do is we want to select the view controller. So I'm going to unselect and I want to select the view controller. And what I want to do is I want to remove the press me to button. And how do we do that? We do that in the connections inspector. Select the view controller, go here, and as you can see, this is the connections inspector. Okay. Now look what happened. There's a couple things that I did first. I erased that IB action, right? I had another IB action here. So I erased the IB action for the press me to button, right? So I erased that connection. But unfortunately, it still holds memory to that connection, and you can see that there's this exclamation point. It's a little hard to see, so I'm going to make my screen a little bigger for you guys. So it still remembers that there's this connection, but now it's sort of undefined because I've actually erased the code that sat here. So anytime that you go into your connections inspector and you see a little exclamation point, that means that that is no longer a valid connection. So we want to actually go ahead and just X out that connection. So that resolves this part, right? That I had erased the IB action. So that's been resolved. Now remember guys that it was I don't want both of these buttons to execute this hello world code. I just want it to correspond. I just want it to correspond to the press me button. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to look at my connection so I can see, okay, I want to keep this one. I don't want to keep this one. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that one. Okay. And then let's go ahead and fix everything again. So let's go here. Let's make that connection. Remember, we're making an action. And we're going to call that press me to button pressed. Everything looks good. So we're going to connect. We see that a connection has been made. But remember, we want to go into the view controller mode. And we can see that now that connection has been made, and that's a good connection. Okay, so the idea behind development too is being able to troubleshoot and be comfortable with the process of things not working. And within Xcode, there are many things that we can do to try to fix things. I really want you guys to definitely review this video as well as my other tips and tricks video because this is going to help you, especially when you're at home or in the lab working by yourself and I'm not there to answer your questions. So definitely, if you're having issues with this, rewatch this video or email me or definitely come to my office hours. Okay, have a great week. Aloha.